Hello there and welcome to my guide for painting Nova from the Marvel Zombies Guardians of the Galaxy set. As you can see, the very first thing I've done is sprayed them with some matte black spray from Colourforge. For the navy blue of his suit, I'm going to use some Cantor blue, and I'll wash that with some Drakenhof Nightshade. Once that wash is dried, I then relayered the Cantor blue, avoiding any of the recesses, and followed this up with a 70-30 mix of Cantor blue and a matte white for the second highlight. Next, I'm going to use Retributor Armor to paint any of the gold areas. And then I'm going to use Bugman's Glow to paint the skin on the hero version. And Rakarth Flesh to paint the skin on the zombie version. Going back to Bugman's Glow, I'm also going to use that to paint any inside sort of damage on the zombie version, the stuff that sort of would expose the raw muscle. Then the gold and the skin will receive a wash with some Reikland Flesh Shade, while the more gorier parts will receive a wash with Carroburg Crimson. Once that wash is dried, we're going to relayer the gold to brighten things up a bit and avoid all of those recesses. Then we'll use a 50-50 mix of Retributor Armor and Uruk Armor Gold for the first highlight, followed by Uruk Armor Gold just by itself, and then finally a 70-30 mix of Uruk Armor Gold and Stormhost Silver for the final highlight. Then for the hero version skin, where you're going to use a 50-50 mix of Bugman's Glow and Cadian Fleshtone, then Cadian Fleshtone just by itself, and then a final highlight of a 50-50 mix of Cadian Fleshtone and Kislev Flesh. For the zombie version, we're going to highlight that with some Flayed One Flesh. And then we're going to use some Pallid Witch Flesh. For the open mouth on the zombie, we're going to use some Screamer Pink. Then with my knuckles in the way, I'm going to paint the teeth and the eyes with some matte white. For the zombie version, I'm going to add some Fuegrin Orange, just a little bit to make the eyes orange. Then for the crest on the helmet, we're going to use Mephiston Red. This will be followed by a 50-50 mix of Mephiston Red and Evil Sunz Scarlet. Then Evil Sunz Scarlet just by itself. And then finally, just in the centre, some Wild Rider Red. With the main guys out of the way, we're then going to move on to the bases. So for the zombie version, we're going to paint that big metallic ship with some Iron Hand Steel. And we're going to give it a dry brush with some Stormhost Silver. For the hero version's base, I'm going to use some Dawnstone, as well as the protruding stone-like bits out of the zombie version's base. These areas will then be dry brushed with some Grey Seer. For the exhaust, I'm going to use some Temple Guard Blue. And this will be followed by a 50-50 mix of Temple Guard Blue and matte white. Then that same mix, but at a 70-30 ratio. Then finally, a small dot of white in the centre. Once again though, of course, I've obscured this with my knuckles. Next, I'm going to use some Avalanche Sunset to paint all of the explosion. Then, while the paint is still wet, I'm going to use some Flash Kits Yellow to start painting into the centre and sort of around the outer edges, but not going all the way down to the bottom. Basically, anywhere where the explosion will be brightest. And then with the paint still wet, I'm going to use some matte white just at the centre to make it look more explosion-y. Then on the outer edges and further away from the explosion, I'm going to use some Fire Dragon Bright. And finally, furthest away from the edge, we're going to use some Troll Slayer Orange. Then I'm going to use a little bit of Dawnstone just on sort of some of the furthest away tips to make it look like some smoke is starting to form. Next, we'll tidy up those rims on the bases with some Abaddon Black. Then around the mouth and in the excessive areas of gore, I'm going to use some blood for the Blood God. You can skip this part if you wish and you don't want to make your models too gory. And once all that gore is dried, that's these guys finished. And I've got to say, I really did enjoy painting Nova and his zombie variant. The bonus about these guys is as well, they're super fast to paint because there's not much colour on them. In fact, you spend more time on the base than you will on the overall models. Overall, it only took around about 2.5 hours to paint these guys, and as I said earlier, it was definitely quite a lot of fun painting them. I really do like the big explosion that the zombie Nova seems to have caused and is bursting out of. I think that's a lovely touch from CMON. If you use this guide, I really do hope you found it useful, and I hope you consider subscribing and checking out the rest of the videos on the channel. We've got plenty more of the Marvel Zombie stuff, as well as Crisis Protocol and Shatterpoint even, might if I get it right, and some 40k stuff on there as well. Thanks again, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye for now.